My hands froze the moment I realized the lunchbox in my bag wasn't mine. It was Julian's. At first, I chuckled at the silly mix-up, imagining how scatterbrained Serena must have been that morning. But when I showed the container to David, my closest colleague and former doctor, everything changed. He examined the rim of the box under the harsh fluorescent light, rubbed it with his finger, and suddenly went pale. His lips trembled as he leaned toward me. "Take your son to the hospital." "Right now? What? Why? It's just food," I stammered, trying to laugh it off. His eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a whisper filled with dread. "I can't explain here. Do what I say, or your son won't live through the day." In that moment, my blood ran cold. I had no idea what Serena had packed, but it wasn't lunch. It was a threat to Julian's life. And what I discovered at the hospital would not only chill me to the bone, it would unravel every truth I thought I knew about my family. If you're watching this, don't look away. Like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing my story of vengeance from. I need to know how far the truth travels. That Monday morning had begun like any other in my Washington, D.C. home. The clatter of pots and pans echoed from the kitchen, the bitter scent of fresh coffee filled the air, and a faint trace of a perfume sample I'd left on the dining table lingered as I rushed about. I was preparing for another busy day overseeing the launch of a new perfume production line, the achievement I had poured my entire soul into. My son, Julian, already looked sharp in his tailored suit. As managing director at a financial firm, he had an important meeting that day. Watching him adjust his tie in the mirror swelled my chest with pride. He was my everything, my only child, the one I had raised with all the love and strength I had. In the kitchen, Serena, my daughter-in-law, stood over the stove, her long ponytail swaying as she stirred. She laughed brightly into her phone while her hands worked with practiced ease, preparing our lunches. 2 containers sat on the counter, a larger one for Julian and a smaller one for me. I lingered in the doorway, heart warm with gratitude. "You're such a thoughtful girl, Serena. You care for your husband and even your mother-in-law." She turned, eyes sparkling as she smiled softly. "I just want us all to eat safely. Eating out isn't worth the risk anymore." Her words touched me more deeply than I realized at the time. I had always considered Serena like the daughter I never had. Lively, caring, dependable. I believed she was the perfect match for Julian. As we left, she quickly handed me the smaller box while slipping the larger one into Julian's car. I tucked mine into my bag without a second thought. I didn't know then that a simple mix-up would alter the course of my life forever. By lunchtime, the office buzzed with chatter and laughter. Employees gathered in the break room swapping stories about their families. I reached into my bag, but the moment I pulled out the container, my heart skipped. This wasn't mine. Serena must have switched them by mistake. I laughed, shaking my head. "Serena is more scatterbrained than me," I joked to myself. But as I opened the lid, something caught my eye. The rim was dusted with tiny white crystals, glistening unnaturally under the light. "Strange," I murmured. "Why would a savory dish be sprinkled with sugar?" My colleagues crowded around, teasing. "Ma'am, it looks like a cocktail glass rimmed with salt." Laughter filled the room, light-hearted and carefree, but I couldn't shake the unease creeping in my chest. That's when I carried it to David, certain he would laugh with me. "Look at this," I said, grinning. "Serena must think Julian needs more sweetness in his life." But David didn't laugh. He tilted the container, studied the crystals, and his entire expression shifted. His skin turned pale, his jaw tightening. He looked at me with horror in his eyes. "Who cooked this?" he demanded, voice low and urgent. I froze. "Serena, of course, my daughter-in-law. She always does." And that was the instant my nightmare began. "She always prepares lunch for both of us," I managed to say, though my voice shook. "This morning she must have mixed them up. I ended up with Julian's container." "Why are you reacting like this?" The question barely left my lips before a wave of dread surged inside me. David didn't answer immediately. He stared at me, his expression heavy, his eyes filled with something between fear and sorrow. Then, with a sudden sharpness that cut through the laughter of the office, he shouted, "Take your son to the hospital." Right now. His words pierced me like a blade. My breath caught, my body froze. Around us, the cheerful chatter stopped at once. The break room fell silent, as if the walls themselves sensed the danger. Young employees exchanged puzzled glances, not understanding what had just shifted the atmosphere from playful to deadly. "David," I whispered, trying desperately to hold on to composure. "What's happening?" "Explain it to me." But he only shook his head. His voice cracked when he spoke again. "I can't tell you here. If you hesitate, your son won't make it. Do as I say." My heart shattered into pieces. Julian, my only child, the boy I had built my entire world around, was in danger, and I didn't even know why. My mind screamed at me to deny it, to laugh it off as nonsense, but the terror in David's eyes silenced my doubt. "Are you serious?" I asked, voice breaking. "This isn't some cruel joke?" David's hand closed over mine, trembling, his eyes red. "I swear on my life, I would never joke about this. Those crystals on the rim, they're not sugar. You must act, and you must act now." His words were like alarm bells crashing inside my head. My instincts screamed at me. This was real. Something inside that lunchbox was poison, and my son had been about to eat it. The container sat on the table like a ticking bomb, silent but merciless. David all but shoved me toward the door. "Go! Don't waste a second." He was already on his phone, his voice urgent. "Toxicology, University of Maryland Medical Center. I need an immediate analysis. Life or death." Clutching the lunchbox as though it were evidence from a crime scene, I slipped it into a plastic bag. Just minutes earlier, I had laughed at those crystals. Now the box felt like it carried the weight of my family's destruction. "I'm going," I said firmly, masking the fear clawing inside me. David's voice dropped to a deadly serious tone. "Don't let anyone touch it. I'll meet you there." I hurried outside and called my driver. Mr. Jones, who had served my family faithfully for more than 20 years, pulled up within minutes. His eyes flickered with curiosity in the rearview mirror as I gave the order. "Straight to the medical center. And hurry." "Yes, ma'am," he replied. No questions asked. As we sped through the crowded streets of Washington, D.C., I sat in the back seat gripping the plastic bag with trembling hands. The city was alive as always. Yellow taxis honking, vendors shouting, the sun gleaming off glass towers, but to me, everything blurred. I was trapped in a nightmare, each passing second carrying Julian closer to death. When we reached the hospital, I marched into reception clutching the bag. A young nurse with thick glasses glanced up. Her expression shifted from boredom to shock when I said, "I need this food analyzed. There's something dangerous inside." She blinked in disbelief, but before she could answer, the phone rang. I heard David's voice on the other end, urgent and commanding. The nurse's face paled as she scribbled notes, then nodded. "Understood, ma'am. The lab will process it immediately." Too drained to explain, I simply nodded. A technician in a white coat came forward and carefully took the container from me, his gloved hands treating it as evidence. I was guided down a sterile corridor to a waiting area. The hospital pulsed with rushing footsteps, intercom calls, and the sharp sting of disinfectant in the air. I sank into a chair, clasping my hands together so tightly my knuckles turned white. Each second dragged like an eternity, each minute a test of how much fear a mother's heart could endure. And as I sat there, one thought echoed over and over in my mind. If I had laughed it off and ignored David, my son would already be dead. I stared at the clock on the wall. The second hand crawled forward with cruel slowness, each tick mocking my helplessness. My chest tightened as memories of Julian flashed in my mind. Him as a little boy running through the park, clutching my hand. Him as a young man on stage, smiling proudly as he received his diploma. And more recently, him sitting on the couch, pale, rubbing his stomach and whispering weakly, "It's just work stress, Mom." Back then, I believed him. But now, David's chilling words burned into my mind. "Or your son won't survive." My breath grew shallow. Who would ever want to harm Julian, my hard-working, kind son who had never hurt anyone? My trembling fingers clutched my phone. I dialed his number. 1 ring, 2, 3, but no answer. My heart sank. I knew he was in a critical meeting, but the silence on the other end was unbearable. I quickly typed a message with shaking hands. "Julian, you must get a secret medical checkup today. Don't tell anyone." Not even your wife. I pressed send, my eyes glued to the screen, but no reply came. Anxiety built inside me like a tidal wave about to crash, threatening to drown me completely. At last, after what felt like an eternity, a young doctor stepped into the waiting room. His name tag read, Dr. Ethan Miller. His expression was grave, though his tone carried a gentleness that terrified me even more. "You're the one who brought in the food container, correct?" I nodded, unable to speak. My pulse thundered as he sat beside me, holding a sheet of paper. We ran the analysis. The meal contained arsenic. It's a highly toxic substance. Prolonged exposure can damage the stomach, liver, kidneys, and it can lead to death. The word arsenic struck me like lightning. My ears rang. My lips parted, but no sound came out. I wanted to believe I'd misheard. "But doctor," Miller continued, his tone tightening. "The symptoms, fatigue, stomach pain, nausea, these align perfectly with chronic poisoning. If your son has been eating this food regularly, the danger is very real." My whole body went cold. In that instant, I remembered every time Julian had rubbed his stomach, every weary sigh, every night he looked pale and exhausted. I had blamed it on stress. Doctors had prescribed vitamins, but all along, a slow poison was hiding in the meals lovingly prepared at home. My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. I forced my voice out, barely more than a whisper. "Thank you, doctor." He placed a hand on my shoulder, a silent gesture of sympathy, before walking away. I stumbled out of the hospital with the plastic bag clutched in my arms as though it contained the final truth of a nightmare. The streets of Washington, D.C. bustled with honking cars and laughing voices, but to me, everything was muted. My world had narrowed to a single tormenting question. Who wanted my son dead? Then, like an icy blade through my heart, a thought struck me. Serena, my daughter-in-law, the woman I loved like my own child, the one who cooked every meal for Julian. Could it really be her? Number. She was attentive, devoted, always watching over him. But the image of those white crystals burned in my memory, and David's voice echoed. "It's something terrible." I checked my phone. Still no reply from Julian. My finger hovered over the call button, but I froze. If Serena was behind this, I couldn't risk alerting her. I needed to stay silent. I needed time to protect my son and to uncover the truth. As the car rolled forward, the evening sun glinted off the skyscrapers, but inside me, darkness spread like poison. I'd already lost my husband a decade ago. I'd built my perfume empire from the ground up, not for myself, but for Julian's future. I could not, would not, lose him. That afternoon, I couldn't go home. Not yet. My mind was in chaos, consumed by the doctor's words, the silence of my son, and the gnawing suspicion that the person I trusted most might be the one slowly killing him. I needed answers. A clue to understand why this nightmare had suddenly fallen upon Julian. With no time to waste, I drove straight to the office of Mr. Harrison, my personal attorney for more than 20 years, the man who had overseen every legal matter of my perfume brand. If anyone knew the truth about my assets and my will, it was him. When I entered, Mr. Harrison sat behind his desk, gold-rimmed glasses glinting as he studied a file. He looked up and offered me a polite smile. "Mrs. Evelyn, what a surprise without an appointment. Is something urgent?" I sank into the leather chair across from him, my voice firmer than I intended. "Harrison, I need you to review my will and every document tied to my estate." Right now, he frowned slightly but did not hesitate. Rising, he pulled open a cabinet and retrieved a thick folder. "This is the last draft you signed last year," he said, placing it before me. I flipped through the pages. Cold words about properties, investments, company shares. But when I reached the inheritance section, ice shot through my veins. The will clearly stated that my assets would be split evenly between Julian and Serena, the daughter-in-law I had always treated as my own. Yet one clause made my blood run cold. If either of them died before me, the survivor would inherit everything. In other words, if Julian were gone, Serena would take it all. My voice trembled. And if I'm still alive? Could she obtain anything then? Harrison adjusted his glasses, his tone heavy with caution. "As long as you live, the brand remains under your control. You can change the will whenever you wish. But if Julian were to pass before you, his personal holdings, properties, investments, would eventually funnel into Serena's hands upon your passing. It is, frankly, the shortest path for her to gain everything." I nodded, but inside, the floor was collapsing. The puzzle pieces aligned, forming an image I didn't want to see. On the drive home, I couldn't stop replaying every memory of Serena. Once, she had seemed flawless, graceful, attentive, the perfect daughter-in-law. But now, everything twisted into suspicion. I remembered the subtle questions about the house in McLean, her casual inquiries about my Hamptons projects. One dinner, she had laughed lightly and said, "When you're no longer in charge, I'll carry on the brand, won't I, Mom?" I promise I'll do it justice. Back then, I smiled, touched by her enthusiasm, but tonight those words echoed like a threat. Could Serena have been plotting for years? Had she never seen us as family but only as obstacles standing between her and unimaginable wealth? By the time I reached home, the sky was dark. The porch light glowed on Serena's figure seated calmly in a wicker chair, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, her smile radiant. "You're back, Mom. I just booked us a spa day for the weekend. They have the most amazing massage package. Want to join?" Her voice was soft, carefree. But that smile no longer warmed me. I searched her eyes for a crack, a flicker of guilt. Nothing, just perfection. Polished, untouchable. "I have a commitment. You go with your friends," I replied curtly, slipping inside before she could see my trembling hands and the fury burning in my eyes. In the living room, I collapsed onto the couch, burying my face in my palms. My heart was torn in two. One half refused to believe that Serena, the girl I had embraced as my own daughter, could be so monstrous. But the other half, the instinct of a mother, screamed that I must protect Julian, even if it meant facing the cruelest truth. And then, a memory surfaced. The very first day Julian brought Serena home to meet me. She had been shy that day, holding Julian's hand tightly, whispering to me, "I promise I'll take good care of him, ma'am." I believed her. I thought I was blessed to have such a daughter-in-law. But now, each memory cut like a blade, twisting deeper with every recollection. The next morning, I woke with a crushing weight on my chest, as though my nightmares had followed me into daylight. Sleep had given me no peace, only images of Julian, the poisoned container, and Serena's radiant smile. A smile I no longer knew was genuine or just a mask of deception. I slipped on a dark blue blouse, the one Julian once said made me look powerful, and drove straight to his downtown office. No warning, just a brief message. "I need to see you right now." My palms were slick against the steering wheel, my grip unyielding. I knew this conversation would tear his world apart, but there was no other choice. He had to know. When I arrived, Julian had just stepped out of a meeting. His tie loosened, his jacket creased, but his smile, bright and carefree, stabbed me with grief. "Mom, what are you doing here without notice?" "Checking if I'm working hard," he teased lightly. Seeing him so alive, so unsuspecting, nearly shattered me. How could I tell him that the woman he trusted most, the one he loved, might be plotting his death? But I forced myself. "Julian, come with me to your office. We need to talk." Now the shift in my tone erased his smile. Without a word, he led me into his private office, sunlight spilling through wide windows overlooking the restless city. He sank into his chair, gesturing for me to sit. "What's wrong, Mom?" "Is it about the perfume company?" His voice was casual, unguarded. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled a folder from my purse, the lab results from the University of Maryland Medical Center and the copy of the will Mr. Harrison had given me. With shaking hands, I pushed them across the desk. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Read it, Julian." He frowned, flipping through the pages. Confusion clouded his face until the words pierced him. His skin drained of color. The papers trembled violently in his hands. "Arsenic? In my food?" His voice broke, his eyes searching mine in disbelief. I drew in a sharp breath and told him everything. The swapped containers, the white crystals, David's frantic warning, the lab's verdict, a lethal poison hidden in plain sight. I laid it out slowly, each word heavier than the last, as if racing through would crush me beneath the truth. Julian froze, clutching the documents like lifelines. He shook his head over and over, desperate to deny it. No, it's impossible, Mom. Serena loves me. She loves us. She cooks for me, cares for every detail. How could she? His voice broke, his eyes welling red. Watching him unravel tore at my soul. I wanted to pull him into my arms, to tell him it was all some cruel mistake. But the evidence screamed otherwise. I steadied myself, forcing strength into my words. "I know, son. I don't want to believe it either, but look at the proof. And think. Your exhaustion, the stomach pain, the nausea. We thought it was stress, but it wasn't." I locked my gaze on him. "Julian, I cannot lose you. You have to face this truth, no matter how unbearable." His head dropped into his hands, fingers clutching his face. He stayed like that, silent, as if piecing together fragments of his life. The fatigue, the forced smiles, the meals served with too much tenderness. Then, suddenly, he slammed his hand down on the desk with a sharp crack that made me flinch. "If this is true," he hissed, his voice quivering with rage, "then she hasn't just betrayed me. She's plotting to steal your legacy and destroy everything we built as a family." In his eyes, I saw a storm, pain laced with fury and a grim determination, as though the entire life he trusted had been shattered by the very woman he once loved. I grasped his trembling hand, squeezing it hard. "Julian, we must involve the police," I said firmly. "Facing her alone is suicide. Silence will only give her more chances to strike." His stare faltered, torn between agony and desperate hope. I knew he still loved Serena, that some part of him still begged for an explanation. But then he drew a ragged breath, his eyes burning red. "Mom, I'll follow your lead. Let's expose her. I won't let you suffer another loss." That same afternoon we walked into the precinct, the air heavy with the scent of stale coffee and cold fear. Waiting for us was Inspector Carter, a graying man with steel eyes and a voice that carried authority. Inside a cramped, white-walled office, I poured out the entire nightmare, from the poisoned food to the lab results, while Julian added his testimony about his worsening health. Carter's pen scratched the paper like a blade. His eyes never left ours. "This is no ordinary case," he said darkly. "We'll take the container as evidence and install hidden cameras in your home. More food samples must be analyzed, but above all, this stays secret. If she senses we're watching her, she'll vanish or strike again. Julian's fists clenched, his jaw trembling. Understood. He muttered hoarsely, though I knew he was fighting a war inside himself, a war between love and survival. When we left, Washington's chaos surrounded us, but Julian walked like a man aged 10 years overnight. In the parking lot, he turned to me, his voice breaking. "Mom, the woman who shared my bed every night wants me dead. But for you, for our name, for this family, I'll endure." I pulled him into my arms, his body shaking against mine. "We're in this together," I whispered as tears streamed silently. The pain seared me, but beneath it burned a fire. From now on, we would stop being prey. We would become hunters. Later, in the car, silence suffocated us. The engine hummed, but my mind raged like a battlefield. Julian's hands dug into his knees, his gaze locked outside, trapped in his prison of betrayal. Then, with a voice low and desperate, he asked, "How do we unmask her, Mom?" I can't let this drag on. My resolve sharpened. "We'll break her patience, Julian. If she truly has a plan, she'll crack." That evening, I called Inspector Carter again. He listened, then spoke like a general. "Strike her motive, money. If she believes the inheritance is slipping away, she'll lose control." His words sliced through me like lightning. The will. Serena's obsession had always lingered there. If she thought the fortune was slipping from her grasp, she'd show her hand. The very next morning, I lifted the phone. "Mr. Harrison, can you come this afternoon? I want to discuss rewriting my will." My voice was deliberately loud, loud enough for Serena, arranging flowers nearby, to hear. I saw her body stiffen. Her hands froze midair. She bent again, feigning calm, but I knew the poison in her veins had just been stirred. That afternoon, when Harrison's sleek car pulled into the driveway, I flung open the gate wide. Serena stood where she could not miss the sight, and in her frozen smile, I saw it, the mask beginning to crack. She stood on the porch, whispering her farewells to a friend, but her eyes flicked sharply toward the car in the driveway, curiosity burning through the mask she tried so hard to keep. Inside, Mr. Harrison and I sat across from one another in the living room, the window deliberately open so every word could spill into the garden. I raised my voice, clear and unwavering. "Mr. Harrison, I've made my decision. In 1 month I will officially change the will. Most of my estate will go to a charitable foundation, to build an orphanage for abandoned children. They need this fortune far more than my own family does." Harrison, fully briefed on the trap, nodded solemnly. "That is a truly noble decision, Mrs. Evelyn, I'll draft the paperwork right away. What portion of your assets do you wish to commit?" I let the words slice through the air like a blade. "At least 80%. The perfume empire, the properties, everything. My legacy must mean something greater." A faint creak echoed from the hallway. I caught the soft shuffle of feet. Serena passed by carrying a tray of fruit, but her steps faltered, just for a heartbeat. Her eyes widened and her mask slipped before she hurried away. My pulse thundered. She had heard, and she was terrified. When Harrison finally rose to leave, Serena escorted him with a brittle smile, her voice trembling. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Harrison, polite, practiced, but hollow. That night I twisted the knife deeper. A family dinner, cheerful on the surface, but beneath it, tension cut like glass. Julian sat beside me, Serena across, her smile painted on, her eyes empty. As I poured the wine, I dropped the bait again. The perfume brand has always been my pride, but it belongs tied to philanthropy now. Giving my assets to the foundation brings me peace." Serena's lips curved, but her hands betrayed her. She gripped her glass so hard her red nails scraped against it. "So noble of you, Mom." "Truly." "Admirable," she said, her voice sharp under the sugar. Julian leaned in, playing his role with quiet force. Yes, Mom. Linking the brand to humanitarian work is priceless. It will outlive all of us. Serena lowered her head, lips pressed tight. When dinner ended, she stood abruptly. I have a late spa appointment with a friend. I'll be back late. She snatched her purse and vanished. I lingered, clearing dishes, then drifted past the garden, only to hear her voice, low and rushed, slicing through the night. We can't wait another month. We have to act now. My blood froze. I coughed deliberately, stepping into view. Serena spun around, eyes wild, panic flashing across her face. Oh, my appointment was rescheduled to tomorrow morning. I'm exhausted tonight, she lied smoothly, slipping her phone away. I smiled gently, masking the fire inside. Rest then, my dear. Don't push yourself too hard, but her mask was cracking. Later, passing her room, I stopped. Her light was still on, her silhouette pacing back and forth, phone glued to her ear. Her whisper, sharp and frantic, carried through the hall. I have to finish this before that old woman signs the new will. I returned to my room, shutting the door with trembling hands. My heart hammered like a war drum. The trap was working. Serena was unraveling. The following days dripped with unbearable tension. On the surface, Julian and I maintained calm smiles, but every word, every gesture felt like balancing on a knife's edge. One morning, as I stirred coffee, Julian entered, his face pale, shadows under his eyes. He sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. His voice was low, heavy with dread. Mom, the food Serena's been giving me tastes strange. Yesterday's soup was bitter. The orange juice this morning had a cloudy white sediment. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but his words faltered, fear gleaming in his eyes. The air in my chest turned to stone. I seized his hand, forcing my voice steady. Listen to me, Julian. Don't touch anything she prepares for you. Not a bite, not a drop. I'll take care of it. Those words echoed in my mind as I sat in a small office near the precinct, my eyes locked on the glowing monitor before me. Days earlier, Inspector Carter had hidden a camera deep in the pantry of my kitchen, and now every movement was being transmitted in sharp detail. On the screen, Serena stood in the kitchen, apron tied neatly, her hair pulled back. She reached for a small glass vial, her hand steady as though she'd rehearsed it countless times. Tilting it, she let a fine stream of white powder drift into the pot of simmering soup. She stirred slowly, her face devoid of any warmth. Just cold, ruthless calculation. My nails dug into the wooden table, the pain grounding me as fury surged through my veins. I wanted to burst into that kitchen to tear the mask off her face, but Carter's firm hand pressed on my shoulder. Steady, Mrs. Evelyn, he murmured. We need her caught in the act. She won't escape. I nodded, but inside, a fire raged. Watching Serena's faint, satisfied smile as she stirred the poison felt like watching my family's heart shatter in real time. I turned to Carter, my voice shaking. Are you certain this is recording? Every second? His eyes hardened. Every detail, Mrs. Evelyn. She won't be able to deny a thing. That night, Julian sat at the table, Serena serving him lovingly. I had warned him. He only had to pretend. He raised the spoon, barely touched the soup to his lips, then pressed his head, groaning as though pain stabbed through him. He collapsed back onto the couch, gasping. Serena rushed to him, her voice dripping with false concern. Darling, you're overworked. Just stress. I'll bring you water. But her eyes, sharp and cold, lingered on his face as though measuring whether her poison had done its work. I busied myself at the sink, hiding my trembling hands. Julian's act was flawless, but I could feel the torment in him, not from poison, but from the betrayal of the woman he had once called his life. Later, the police quietly collected the food samples. The next morning, Carter summoned me. He slid the lab report across his desk, his tone grave. The arsenic concentration in last night's soup and juice is double what we found before. She's panicking, afraid of losing the inheritance after your will announcement. She's accelerating her plan. My blood turned to ice. Double, I whispered, staring at the report. Serena wasn't just trying to weaken Julian anymore. She wanted him gone. Fast. Carter leaned closer, his voice low. You and your son must tread carefully. She's unraveling, and that makes her more dangerous than ever. From that moment, every glance, every gesture became a battlefield. At breakfast, Serena placed Julian's glass first, her hands careful, her smile too sweet. One morning, I intercepted. Serena, could you bring me some juice instead? She hesitated in the kitchen, her movements clumsy. When she returned, her hands trembled slightly as she passed me the glass. Here you go, Mom. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. I smiled, set the glass down untouched. Thank you, dear. On second thought, I'll just have water. Her mask cracked, only for a second, but I saw the fear flash in her eyes. Another evening, she set a steaming bowl of soup before Julian. Eat, my love. I made this especially for you. Before Julian could speak, I cut in, locking eyes with her. I'm old. I can only handle broth now. Let your husband enjoy the full soup. Serena froze, her smile faltering. Of course, she replied quickly, but her voice wavered as she turned away. Every refusal, every false smile was another thread in the trap we were weaving. Julian played his part perfectly, complaining of fatigue at home, clutching his stomach at work. To outsiders, he looked like a man slowly fading. But we knew the truth. The predator circling him had no idea her own snare was tightening. Serena's cry cut through the night like a blade. She clung to Julian's limp hand, her voice cracking with desperation. I have to go with him. Please, let me go. But behind those frantic tears I caught that flicker again. Satisfaction, not grief. The paramedics, undercover officers, moved swiftly, blocking her path. Ma'am, stay back. We need space to work, one barked. Serena struggled against them, her sobs echoing through the hallway, but she didn't dare insist too hard. That hesitation told me everything. She believed he was truly gone. I followed closely as they carried Julian into the ambulance, but Serena's hand clamped on my arm. Her nails dug deep, her whisper seething through clenched teeth. Don't think this changes anything. Soon, everything will be mine. Her words froze my blood. I forced myself not to react, only nodding weakly before tearing free and climbing into the ambulance. As the doors shut, the siren wailed, drowning out the pounding of my heart. Inside, Julian lay perfectly still, monitors rigged to mimic fading vitals. I brushed his hair back, whispering, "Hold on, my son." Just a little longer, even knowing it was all staged. Seeing him so pale nearly shattered me. At the hospital, the plan snapped into motion. Dr. Laura Wilson met us, her expression grim for the act, but her eyes steady with resolve. "Severe poisoning, cardiac arrest," she announced, loud enough for Serena, who was already rushing down the corridor, to hear. Papers, charts, and machines made the illusion airtight. From the viewing window, I watched Serena collapse into a chair, her shoulders shaking as if broken. But then, just for a breath, her lips curved into the faintest smile. That was the proof we needed. Inspector Carter appeared at my side, his voice a low growl. One more push. Let her believe she's won. When she speaks, we'll have her confession on record. I pressed my palm against the glass, torn between rage and sorrow. My son's sacrifice had brought us here, to the edge of truth. But the next hours would decide everything. If Serena slipped through our fingers now, if she sensed the trap, she wouldn't just come for Julian again, she'd come for me. And I knew I wouldn't survive her twice. "I'm his wife!" Serena's voice ripped through the hallway, desperate and commanding. But the officer's reply was cold, immovable. "I'm sorry, ma'am." Only one person can accompany the patient. I stepped forward, forcing myself to mask the storm boiling inside me. I clasped Serena's trembling hand and whispered with feigned tenderness, "Stay here, my dear. I'll go with Julian. I'll tell you everything." Her red eyes met mine, and for a split second I saw it, the quiver of triumph she tried to hide. The ambulance door slammed shut like a prison gate. Beside my son's still body, I grasped his hand. "You did it perfectly, Julian. Now it's my turn." His eyes flickered open, weak but steady. "I trust you, Mom." The words seared into my chest, half blessing, half burden. At the University of Maryland Medical Center, the trap came alive. Wires, machines, and the cruel flatline of a monitor painted a chilling illusion of death. Dr. Wilson moved with precision, her forged file thick with lies that felt terrifyingly real. I sat at his bedside, watching my son's painted pallor. Even knowing it was theater, the sight broke me. Memories of his childhood, his laughter in the garden, his small hand gripping mine, flashed before me like knives. Still, I steeled myself. This was the only way. With trembling fingers, I sent the text that would seal our fates. "Come to the hospital immediately." Julian didn't make it. Hitting send felt like casting a stone into endless darkness. Minutes crawled like hours. Every creak of the hallway sent my pulse racing. In the corner, Inspector Carter hunched over a hidden monitor, his voice a razor-thin whisper. "Hold steady. Her reaction will give us everything." Then, footsteps. Rapid, unsteady, echoing through the sterile corridor. Serena appeared, hair disheveled, makeup streaked, one heel dragging. She collapsed into my arms, her sobs loud, theatrical. "It can't be. Mom!" Julian was so young. The words trembled, but her performance rang hollow. I stiffened, every muscle aching to lash out. Instead, I forced a mother's broken voice. "Serena, calm down. Please." Rage and grief strangled my throat, but I held the mask in place. Nearby, plainclothes officers pretended to linger, cameras hidden, recording everything. Serena never noticed. Her tears fell fast, but behind the wet shimmer, her eyes glinted with something poisonous. Relief. "Come," I whispered, guiding her toward the room. "See him. One last time." Inside, the air was heavy with false death. Julian lay beneath the sheet, pale and lifeless, the machines beeping faintly like a fading heartbeat. Serena touched his cold hand, her shoulders shaking. But I caught it, the tiniest curve of her lips, a release, as if the weight of her secret had finally lifted. Then her whisper, barely audible but sharp enough to slice through me. "Finally? It's over." My blood froze. The hidden microphone captured every word, and in the next heartbeat, Julian's eyes snapped open. He sat up, sudden and alive. Serena's scream shattered the room. She stumbled back, horror etched across her face. "No! It's impossible. I was so careful." Her voice cracked into madness, her mask torn away at last. I stood rooted, my heart hammering with both triumph and unbearable sorrow. The game was over, but the cost was carved into our souls forever. Julian's voice cracked like thunder. His eyes, burning with fury and betrayal, locked onto Serena. "Careful?" he spat, his tone glacial. "Careful to kill me? Isn't that what you mean?" Serena staggered backward, her fingers clawing at the bed frame for balance. No, it's not like that." "You're mistaken," she gasped, but her trembling voice betrayed her. The door burst open. Inspector Carter strode in, his voice iron hard. "Enough, Serena. We've heard all we need. You're under arrest for attempted murder." 3 officers surged in behind him, blocking every path of escape. Serena spun around, her face drained of color. "No! It wasn't me," she screamed, her words tumbling over each other. "It was just a spice. I only wanted to give it flavor." But Carter's reply was merciless. He lifted a folder and a USB stick, his calmness sharper than any blade. "Do you want to see it?" "The video of you pouring powder into the soup. The lab results showing arsenic. The recording of your phone call. And your own words. Spoken right here. It's all here." Her knees buckled. Serena swayed like a puppet with its strings cut, her eyes darting between me and Julian in sheer panic. I didn't mean to kill anyone," she whispered. But then the pressure broke her, shattering what little resistance remained. She collapsed onto the cold floor, screaming through her hands. "I just wanted the money. I couldn't let that old woman give everything to charity. She left me no choice." Her confession cut through me like a blade. Betrayal confirmed, by the woman I once called daughter. My chest ached with both pain and relief. Pain for the trust destroyed, relief that the mask had finally fallen. Julian stepped to my side, his arm tightening around me. "Mom, we won." His voice quivered, but the resolve in it was unshakable. I gripped his hand, feeling the life in him, the warmth I had almost lost forever. "I'm so proud of you, my son," I whispered, tears slipping silently down my cheeks. On the floor, Serena sobbed uncontrollably as the officers closed in. The snap of handcuffs echoed like a verdict. Carter's voice was cold steel. "Serena, you're coming with us." She lifted her tear-streaked face toward me, her eyes begging, but I shook my head, my throat tight. "You chose this, Serena. I trusted you, and you destroyed us." Dragged away, her cries fading, the hospital corridor fell into an eerie silence. I wrapped my arms around Julian, pressing my ear to his chest, clinging to the sound of his heartbeat, the heartbeat I feared I would never hear again. In that moment, amidst the chaos of doctors and nurses rushing past, there were only the two of us. Memories flooded back, years of raising him alone, every sacrifice, every dream poured into building something for him. All of it led here. And he was still with me. The officers moved Serena to a sterile interrogation room, its harsh fluorescent light slicing through the air. Julian and I were led into a hidden observation room with a two-way mirror. I gripped his trembling hand, his gaze fixed on Serena like a man staring at the ruins of a love he once believed in. "Son," I whispered, "this ends today." Whether I was comforting him or myself, I couldn't tell. Inside, Serena sat slumped at a metal table, hair tangled, sweat glistening on her brow. Carter leaned forward, his voice low but cutting. "Serena, we don't want to make this harder than it already is. Tell us the truth. Why did you do it?" Her head snapped up, eyes flashing wildly. "I didn't. You're twisting everything to trap me." Her voice rose, defiant, but the tremor in it betrayed her unraveling. Carter said nothing. He simply placed a small glass vial on the table, the same one pulled from my kitchen. His words landed like a hammer. "What is this, Serena? Salt, sugar, or arsenic?" Her eyes locked on the vial, widening in horror. Silence strangled her. Her fists clenched so tight her knuckles whitened. Beside me, Julian's body tensed, his fists trembling, his breath unsteady. He was no longer just a victim. He was a man facing the monster behind the mask of the woman he once loved. "Calm yourself, Julian," I whispered, my hand gripping his shoulder, though I was barely containing the storm of rage boiling inside me. The door creaked open, and a doctor in a white coat stepped into the interrogation room, clutching a stack of papers. His voice was steady, deliberate. "These are the results of the soup and juice samples we retrieved from your home." His gaze locked on Serena. "The arsenic concentration was lethal, enough to kill a healthy adult in a matter of hours." Serena shook her head violently, a strained laugh slipping from her trembling lips. "No, that's not true. I only gave him vitamins. Julian was exhausted all the time. I just wanted to make him stronger." But her words faltered, weak, as though she didn't believe them herself. Inspector Carter cut her short. With a swift motion, he powered on the monitor in front of her. The hidden camera footage came alive, every pixel sharp. Serena, apron-tied, uncapping the glass vial, tilting it into the steaming pot, and stirring with practiced ease, masking it as salt and pepper. Her face was stone, emotionless, chilling. Beside me, Julian exhaled a broken sound, pressing both hands to his face. He couldn't bear to look at the woman he once adored exposed in such cruel clarity. My own chest constricted, but I gripped his hand firmly. This was the moment to endure, not to collapse. "Do you have anything left to say?" Carter's voice sliced the silence, calm but sharper than a blade. Serena's eyes darted wildly, sweat streaming down her cheeks. I don't know anything about arsenic," she stammered, her voice shattering into fragments. Carter gave a nod. An officer pressed a button, and another damning piece of evidence filled the room. An audio file. Serena's own voice hissed from the speakers. "Just a few more days. After that, I'll be the only one who gets everything." She froze, her face ashen, like a mask struck by lightning. "That's not me," she cried, but her tone lacked conviction. Beside me, Julian shot up, fists clenched, his eyes bloodshot. "Mom, I can't stand this anymore," he growled, ready to storm into the room. I caught him, wrapping my arms tightly around him. "Son, stay strong. Let the law crush her lies. She's cornered, and she knows it." Still, the anguish in his eyes tore at me. It wasn't just rage, but heartbreak. The woman he once trusted with his soul sat in there, drowning in her own deceit. Carter's tone never wavered. He slid a folder across the table. "There's one more thing, Serena." He tapped the will and estate papers. "If Julian died before his mother, you inherited everything. You knew that, didn't you?" Serena's eyes widened in panic, her lips quivering but no words escaping. "You mapped this out long ago," Carter pressed on, his calmness suffocating. "Starting with small doses of arsenic. Escalating when you overheard plans to donate the fortune to charity. Serena's dam cracked. She broke down, sobbing, yet not with remorse. Her voice rose, venomous. It's her fault. That old woman. If she hadn't announced the donation, I wouldn't have had to act so fast." Her words struck me like a blade. My body froze, my world imploding. She hadn't just tried to murder my son, she blamed me as though I had forced her hand. Julian pulled me close, his voice ragged but steady. "Mom, don't let her poison your heart. She doesn't deserve it." Carter signaled an officer, signing the preventive detention order without hesitation. "Serena, you'll be transferred to Central Precinct immediately," he said coldly. Serena collapsed, sobbing into her hands, but the room was stone. No pity, no sympathy. Officers hauled her up, her cries echoing down the sterile hospital hallway as they dragged her away. Julian and I remained behind, staring through the two-way mirror at the abandoned table, the damning folder lying like a scar on the metal surface. The next morning, hand in hand, we entered the D.C. Police headquarters where Serena had been brought for her official statement. The building reeked of old paper and stale coffee, the atmosphere suffocating with gravity. A silent officer guided us into a narrow room. We sat, tense and waiting, called not just as family but as witnesses to the final unraveling of her lies. "Mom, tell me this ends today." My son's voice trembled, but his eyes burned with a new resolve. The pain of yesterday was still carved into his face, yet something harder, fiercer, had taken root. I clasped Julian's hand, forcing my own fear into steel. "Yes, son. This nightmare ends now." The door opened with a metallic groan. They dragged Serena into the interrogation room, her body crumpled, her head lowered. No trace remained of the radiant woman I once welcomed into my family. The silk blouse she wore was wrinkled, her hair a tangled veil over her swollen eyes. She looked like a shadow, one that had almost destroyed everything I loved. My chest tightened with a fury I barely contained. This woman had shared my table, my trust, my son's heart. Now she was just a stranger. Worse, a traitor. Her public defender entered, a gray-suited man whose expression betrayed exhaustion more than conviction. He placed his briefcase on the table, his voice firm yet weary. "Miss Serena, I strongly advise you to cooperate." The evidence against you is crushing. Serena's head jerked up. Panic flickered in her eyes, but then, as if every defense crumbled at once, she whispered, "I'll tell you everything. I can't hide anymore." The words pierced the room like a blade. Beside me, Julian inhaled sharply, fists trembling. I gripped his shoulder, steadying him, though I myself was shaking, bracing for the confession that would shatter us both. Her voice came fragile but sharp enough to wound. "I researched arsenic in secret forums, learned how small doses could slip past suspicion. I bought it from a black market dealer on the city's edge. Then I began adding it to Julian's meals, just a little, every day." My breath caught. My nails dug into the table until pain shot through my fingers. I could see her in my mind's eye, stirring the pot, sprinkling poison like it was seasoning. Her lips quivered, but her confession deepened. I didn't want him to die suddenly. I wanted him weak, everyone thinking it was an illness. When he was gone, I'd inherit. After that, her gaze flickered toward the glass, as if she could feel my eyes burning through it. After that, I planned for the lady, to pass away naturally. Julian shot to his feet, his hand slamming onto the table. "You wanted to kill my mother too?" His voice cracked with rage, his eyes bloodshot. I pulled him back, wrapping my arms around him. "Son, she's powerless now." My whisper was calm, but inside, I was torn apart. She hadn't only tried to take my son, she had marked me as her next target. Inspector Carter leaned forward, his voice measured but sharp. "So, it was all about money?" Serena nodded, tears streaking her face, yet no remorse stained her words. "I had nothing. I grew up in poverty. I grew up. Marrying Julian was my chance at a new life. But when she said she'd give everything to charity, I couldn't let that happen." I buried my face in my hands. My heart cracked open. I had believed in her love, trusted her loyalty. Instead, her ambition had turned her into a monster. The officers recorded her every word. Her lawyer said nothing. There was nothing left to defend. Carter signed the arrest warrant with a stroke that echoed like a verdict. "Miss Serena, you are under arrest. Attempted murder is not a minor matter." She broke down, sobbing behind her hands. But no one moved. No one pitied her. Chains of law and justice bound her now. Her footsteps dragged down the hallway, each one a fading echo of betrayal. Julian and I sat frozen, staring at the empty table through the two-way mirror, the weight of truth pressing down on us. By morning, the city roared with headlines. "Young socialite arrested in plot to poison husband for fortune." My phone screen burned with the words, a nightmare printed for the world to see. Stocks from the firm where Julian was a managing director plummeted, scandal scorching every headline. Yet the board acted fast, facing the cameras, speaking the truth, calming the storm. But inside me, the storm still raged.